love the Indianapolis Colts. That was like one of my. It wasn't my favorite team, but it was one of my favorite teams to watch. I used to love football
Well, I
back in
grew
the
up
day.
in Chicago in the heyday of the Chicago Bears. So I used to be a huge football fan.
Bad news bears. Oh, watch out.
Yeah. Walter Payton and the Fred. I mean, I just loved all of them.
Oh my God, we're aging ourselves. Walter,
Oh,
we don't know
yeah.
who
Oh,
Walter
yeah.
Payton is, everyone.
Talk about aging yourself. I have a wrist brace on. I literally fractured my wrist getting out of bed. I mean, you only do that when your oldest mold. It's just
Oh,
ridiculous.
oh my
I mean, I
goodness.
don't
And
even
she
know.
had the brace, everyone. Oh my
Oh, it's just
goodness.
terrible. I thought, what did I do? All I did was get out of bed. It
And she
happens when you
has a
get
big
old.
cup of, is that a big cup of coffee I see as well?
It is a very big cup of coffee, pumpkin spice latte, homemade.
Oh, not at Starbucks.
Not a big, I mean, people will be surprised to hear this because I used to be a huge Starbucks fan. Their
Yep.
coffee is just too bitter for me.
Can I tell you, I haven't had coffee ever in my life, not even once.
Oh, bless you. And you're still functioning so well.
I know I
Well,
had
I
my
do,
first.
I drink
Oh,
decaf.
good.
So, I mean, there is a
Okay.
balance. I drink up one or two cups of caffeine in the morning and then I switch to decaf.
Okay. Okay. Because I tried my first latte 2.5 years ago,
Okay.
and I drink hot chocolate, but I love tea. I'm a big tea drinker.
Okay. Yeah. That's how my mom is.
But yeah, but coffee, I don't know. I just couldn't get into coffee, even though I see it everywhere. The marketing is amazing for coffee.
Isn't it crazy? I mean, everyone has got their own special Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's, everyone's in the coffee game. There's this little coffee shop, this local coffee shop called Blue Collar. That is my favorite. And it's about a 15 or 20-minute walk from our house. So I like to walk down there, and my little reward for the walk is a latte.
So
So
how do you make your own coffee? Like how like what makes it different, or I guess unique, or the Adriana flavor to it?
So I use almond milk in my lattes because I have lactose intolerance. I do not do well with dairy. And I have a bunch of sugar-free flavored syrups. I'm diabetic, so it has to be sugar-free. So I buy all these sugar-free syrups, coffee syrups from Skinny Mixes, and just change up the flavor of it all the time. First thing in the morning is just regular coffee with like a touch of sweetener. But as the day goes on, they get more sweet and exciting.
So you have coffee multiple times during the day.
I have coffee all day long. It is my primary way of being hydrated.
Oh my
As I
God.
like to say,
So
it's just brown water.
I'm that way with actual water. I've already had, as I look at my glass to the left of me here, I think that's probably my fourth glass of water so far. And it's only
I mean, I wish I was as good as you with the water. I don't, for some reason, I don't like the flavor of water. And people are like, it doesn't have a taste. I'm like, it does. And I don't like the taste.
I'm
But
the
I drink
opposite. I love
smart
water.
water. I drink one bottle of smart water
Yes.
every day, like the liter bottle.
Yeah, the ones I buy is only smart water.
Yeah, that's the way. Yeah,
But
that's what I drink.
I agree. The more water I drink, the more I realize that it feels, at least to me, that there's a flavor to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I don't know how anyone can say that it doesn't have a flavor, because to me, I actually enjoy it, the taste and everything.
I don't mind the smart water, but like regular water, just good old fashioned water, no, yucky.
So
Yeah.
I guess we'll officially get started, because you look excited and I'm excited to get our way, because your journey is, from what you've told me, what you shared so far, is so amazing. I can't wait to dive deeper into it and figure out what makes Adriana tick.
Thank you, Adriana.
Adriana, my apologies, Adriana.
It's okay, happens all the time.
So let's get started. I want to welcome everyone to another episode of Behind the Shades. I have with us Adriana. And Adriana, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I guess more so than the big cup of coffee and your injury from your morning so far. So go ahead, please.
Well, I'm a four-time entrepreneur, former chief marketing officer, chief digital marketing officer in corporate America. And I currently run a social media marketing agency that turned 5 this year. I am happily married. Thank you. It's a big accomplishment. I'm happily married to my best friend, live in Indianapolis. I have one fur baby. He's always on my lap. Here he is, Henry Winston. And No, I live with 9 chronic diseases. I've had 27 procedures in the last 5.5 years, including some really radical surgeries. And just kind of live every day to the fullest. So thank you for having me. I'm excited.
And I appreciate you being here. And as a dog owner, tell Henry I said hi, by the
He says hello. He says hello back.
way. There we go. So tell us a little bit about your journey because the 27,
Yeah,
it's a big number.
it's a really
So,
big number.
so tell us a little bit about that. And the reason why I want to start there is for me, I'm 32 years old and I haven't, God willing, had any major issues so far. But as I get older, and you've probably begin to see this now because you're more aware of it, I'm beginning to see more and more people going through health issues, particularly mental health, right? But in your situation, tell us about this and your state of mind when you're going through it.
Yeah. So I would say when it started, I started getting sick in my late or mid to late 20s and spent a lot of time not knowing what was wrong with me. I spent about 6 weeks at Mayo Clinic up in Minnesota, and they diagnosed that I had a paralyzed stomach. And so I started realizing that was essentially, I was vomiting all the time. And so they figured out there was like a mass in my stomach and my stomach was paralyzed. And so I would have trouble eating. So I adjusted to that. And then shortly after that, within a couple of years, I was diagnosed with Addison's disease, which is a disease of the adrenal glands, also with hypothyroid and hypopituitary. So your pituitary is a little gland in your brain, and mine functions like it has a tumor on it, but thank God there's no actual tumor. It just functions like it does. So nothing really works right. And what happens with some of these diseases is they compound and create other diseases. So when I started being treated in 2015 for my paralyzed stomach, the doctor said, there is a chance this will affect your pancreas, which is the first time I had heard of that. And I was like, okay, no problem. And then Addison's disease, I take steroids every day, and long-term use of steroids leads to osteoporosis. So I have osteoporosis. And then as my body got more sensitive, I ended up with celiac, so I can't have any gluten. And then the pancreas disease is what's really changed my life. I would say when I was beginning to get sick with the pancreas disease in 2015, the fall of 2015, I was really mentally strong and like mentally persistent. And I have been on my own since I was 17. Nothing really has come my way that pushed me down like this. But after a year filled with feeding tubes and procedures and weeks-long hospital stays and surgeries, not to mention debilitating pain and constantly vomiting, I was definitely mentally worn down. In December of 2016, I had a surgery called the Whipple, and that's where they removed over half my stomach, half my pancreas, my small intestine, my bile duct, and I had previously had the gallbladder and appendix removed. It was an 18-month recovery. The first 6 months I was in a wheelchair and really bedridden. So about 6 months after the surgery, I was diagnosed with PTSD. And I was really surprised. I really thought that was like just for veterans. I didn't realize you could have it from something else. So thankfully I have a hugely supportive network around me with medical professionals, a therapist, and my husband, who's amazing. So, but 27 procedures. I've had several surgeries of those procedures, but I've also had what's called a TPAIT, or total pancreatectomy auto islet transplant. And that was in November of 2019, where they removed the remaining part of my pancreas, harvested the islet cells, which is what produces insulin in your body, and transplanted them into my liver. So that makes you a type 3C diabetic, insulin dependent. So I now have that as well. So you can tell they just snowball into more and more things. But you really learn how to live with all of it, believe it or not.
I was just going to say, one, maybe two, can have someone feeling like it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
And here you are, 27 later,
Yeah.
still happy, still smiling.
Mhm.
You have this wonderful, and I love that you mentioned that you have this wonderful support system. And for those listening, your support system to me is like you're running the race in your life. They're at the finish line cheering you on. When you want to stop, they're the ones that's giving you the energy to keep going. And it is very, very important because I look around some of my friends these days and the stuff that they're going through. I may not know your husband, but it's the way you have spoke about him, sorry, and the way you spoke about your support network. I want to be that way for my friends. I want to check in with them and say, hey, how are you doing? Is everything okay? Do this, do that. Because I could just imagine, let's say it was just you alone
Yeah.
going through that. I can just imagine your state of mind would be vastly different. Would you say the same?
I wouldn't have made it. I mean, he's absolutely the reason. I have a vivid memory. Ironically, I don't have a lot of memory from the past 5 years because I've been under anesthesia and been on significant narcotics for so long, that I just have not remembered a lot, which I think is a blessing actually. But I have a vivid memory of one of the days I was in the hospital and I had been feeling my body just shut down. My kidneys were shutting down. My whole system was shutting down. I didn't even have enough strength to raise the hospital bed, which is automatic. I mean, you just have to press a button. I could not even do that. So I asked him to raise the bed and I told him I wanted to say goodbye and told him some just little things like, you'll know it's me every time you see a penny. And he was like, no, I'm not listening to this. We are not having this conversation. You are not dying. You better find some strength somewhere else and pull through this. And he is absolutely the reason I'm here today. I would not have made it without him, hands down.
How do you continue forward now? Is this situation, even though you're living with it, is it more so in the rearview mirror? Or is it something that you feel that is always on your mind and you're always carrying with you, even though you're here, maybe probably stronger than you were back then? And I mean, from a physical standpoint.
Yeah, it's definitely something that it's not, I like to think of myself as a healthy person because I have so many challenges health wise. It stays top of mind. Everything I put in my mouth, from a sip of water to, a pudding, has a chance to wreak just complete havoc on my system. So I only eat about 4 or 5 foods consistently. And I do my best to try new foods. Mostly that's not a good experience, but I try. And, it's very interesting, when you have diabetes, like I do, insulin dependent, you're always watching your sugars and your sugars are going high and low, and it's just constant management. So what I would say is it's definitely in the front of my mind to manage it, but that's so that I can live every day to the fullest with these diseases, as opposed to thinking of myself as a sick person who all I do is manage disease.
And I like that you mentioned that your view of yourself hasn't changed, meaning that you're a healthy person going through this instead of I'm an unhealthy person, woe is me. Not to look down on it, but sometimes we do, right? Like sometimes we do when we go through something, we say, oh, I try to live my life and now I'm just this unhealthy, overweight, balding. Like we make up this in our mind, right?
Yeah.
To tear ourselves down. But words are so powerful. And the fact that you look at yourself as a healthy person who's just going through this, similar to me, I may be a healthy person that is going through as diabetic. I may be a healthy person that has an allergy to cucumbers. Whatever the situation is, we should still try to navigate ourselves in the best positive light. And with you, when it comes to the food, because these days it seems like everyone's a foodie, right? Everyone
Oh, right.
loves food.
Yeah.
Is that hard for you to only have 4 or 5 different foods? And when you know that you want to try something else, there's always that thought, my body might not accept this.
It's interesting. I describe it as a fear of food. So I've been on 7 feeding tubes in the last 5 years. And when I'm on a feeding tube, typically I can't even have water. So it's just like air is my only option. And so I'm actually grateful that I'm not on a feeding tube, even though I can only eat 4 or 5 foods. I'm just happy that I can eat those and stay nourished. It is confronting to try new foods because I have such bad responses to them sometimes. But I look at it as, you don't know unless you try. So you've got to try something new. I think the other thing that's really interesting is I can eat something for like 3 months and have no problems. And then one day my body just won't take it anymore. Like I was eating sweet potato puree like once a day. And all of a sudden, like a month after I was doing that, I just started throwing it up every time I ate it. So it's like my body builds up this attack against foods. And so I'm just grateful I have the 4 or 5 I have. So I'm not on a feeding tube again.
I was that way with broccoli and celery. I used to eat broccoli, not broccoli, sorry, cauliflower. I used to be
Mhm.
that way with cauliflower. I used to eat it with every meal. Then one day I ate it, I threw up, and I thought it was just undercooked. All right. And
Try it again.
then try it again. Same thing. I did an allergy test. I have a very mild allergy to celery now and cauliflower. So I have an idea of what you're going through, where sometimes you've been eating something for so long, and then all of a sudden it just doesn't agree with you anymore.
Yeah.
And it's a change that we have to make. And on the note of making changes, I know you mentioned that career wise, you had to make quite the change.
Yeah.
How was that experience? Because that seems to be that it happened at the height, if I remember correctly, of your situation.
Yeah. So I was a corporate executive with Sears Holdings, so Sears and Kmart, running all social, mobile, and their online customer care center for a number of years. And then I was given an opportunity here in Indianapolis to be a chief digital marketing officer for a massive home services company. And so I took that on, and I was only in that role maybe 6 months when my pancreas went to heck and back. And I started ending up with a lot of hospital stays. So it was very confronting because I had spent my whole life building up to get to that C-suite position in corporate America and enjoy all the benefits that come with it, all the big salary and working hard to bonuses and leading a team. And I mean, I really worked so hard for that. And to just have it kind of taken away from you. The company I was with didn't respond all that well to having somebody with health challenges. And so we parted ways. And I still struggled, I will say, for years thinking, I want to go back to corporate America. I really want to do this. And I had opened my own social media marketing agency the month I separated from the company. And I will tell you the interesting thing about that is I was so motivated to stay working and to stay with my clients that I was working in the hospital. I was bedridden for a long time. I was working from bed. Of course, that was pre-COVID, so no one was on Zoom all the time. You could do that. Now it's a lot harder, but I'm healthier. But I had a really hard transition. I felt really like I was losing my career and losing part of my identity, because that's how I had defined success and that's how I had defined everything. And so I mean, I put my career above everything. I don't have children except for my little fur baby and a stepdaughter now. I mean, I really threw everything into my career. So it was very confronting and I would say very difficult. But now I have the opportunity to do my own schedule. So for example, I work really early in the morning, like 5 or 6 a.m. until about 2:30 p.m. And then I crack off and maybe I come back on at 7:30 p.m. if I have the energy. But you can't do that in a corporate environment. They're scheduling meetings at 4 p.m. and I have no energy. I need to be napping. And so I have full control over my calendar. And I've got a team around me that I've hired that is just the best support team. And so they step in on days that are really bad and I can't attend a meeting. They step in and take over. And so, hello, Henry. So building a support system like that in my career world was essential. But I definitely struggled with it for a number of years, without question.
And I totally understand that because I'm in corporate Canada, not corporate America, right? I've been there for about 14 years. And my goal is to get where you are. But there's a lot of people in the corporate world, they're like, I can't do it. Because for those who don't know, when you're in a manager or above, executive or above role, your presence is felt when you're not there. And I'll elaborate. Your title precedes you. They know who you are, where you're going, things like that. There's times where you go to an event, there's a driver for you. There's times where you'd go to a restaurant and it could be on the company's tab. It could be this. there are certain perks that your title will get you. And for a lot of us, as you mentioned as well, is we give up a lot. It's a lot of years, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of us for
Yes.
the role.
Mm-hmm.
And when you ultimately leave, some cases you leave because you've been promoted on, or some cases you've established your own business and you move forward. It's not until when you leave you realize how replaceable you are.
Yes.
And I
Exactly.
think for those who want that type of role, you need to understand you're going to bust your butt. You're going to work these long hours. You're going to have the meetings at 4 p.m. You're going to have the meetings at 5 p.m., even though at 5:05, even though you're done at 5 p.m., you're going to have these long hours. Yes, there's perks and benefits there, but depending on the type of life you want to live outside of your job, it may not be worth it and it may not be for everyone. Looking back on how much you've accomplished now, is it somewhat of a blessing in disguise for you that you've separated from the corporate world?
Oh, it definitely is. I mean, I was without question a workaholic. I had meetings from 7 to 7 every day, and I was in before my meetings and there after my meetings. And every Friday night, I did my department's finances. I never went out on Friday nights. I was at work until 10 or 11. I mean, and on the weekends, I was hosting something, some nonprofit that I was on the board of, or in the evenings, I was at some kind of corporate dinner. It literally consumed my life, and I loved it. However, now what consumes my life is my marriage with my husband, which is amazing, is partly my health, my business, which I love working in, but also family and friends, traveling to enjoy my time with them. I have a standing meeting every Thursday at 10:30 with a client, and they laugh. They're like, where in the world is Adriana this week? You know, one week I might be in St. Louis, the next week I might be in Phoenix, the next week Nashville. But I have the luxury of being able to travel with my husband when he's out of town because I can work from anywhere. And so I have really found that this is such a big blessing in disguise, to use your words. I mean, I would say it was really hard because I was the first in my family to be an executive, and being a Latin woman, there's you're shattering a lot of ceilings when you do that. And so I was heralded for that. Whereas not just in my family, but in the industry, now there aren't the industry awards, and my mom still doesn't know what I do. But she just calls me every time her iPhone doesn't work. But the reality is I don't need all of that anymore. I came to the conclusion that where I am is more of a space of gratitude for how far I have come in my life.
I'm the same way. When I talk about my career with my friends or my family, the only time they understand is when I say I manage people.
Right.
They have,
Yeah.
right? The day to day, they don't, they have an idea. I believe because of maybe the movies or the shows, they have an idea. Like if you can describe it and say, I'm kind of like a CEO, but I don't get CEO money, then all of a sudden their
Mhm.
eyes get big, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because now there's pride, there's prestige. As you mentioned, you're being heralded, especially if you're the first. I'm the oldest of three children, and I'm the first to graduate post secondary. I'm the first to be in that type of role.
Mm-hmm.
My parents weren't, my grandparents weren't, so on and so forth. So similar to when you mentioned that you're the first in this, you're the first in that, I totally understand it because I know what it's like. It's like you're the pride and joy of people that you're not really close with family wise. Like you see them at barbecues and events and stuff like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right? But they know that you're somebody, even though they don't necessarily know what you do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I swear to you, my mom thinks being executive is just flying around the country having lunch for 3 hours a day. It's like, no. But if you want to think that that makes you happy, that's fine too. I'm not going to burst your bubble. But to your point, you do kind of carry the weight of your family. I like you, I'm the first to graduate college in my family. My immediate family, my grandfather was a engineer, graduate of Northwestern, but I'm the first in my immediate family of any of the kids or my parents to graduate college. And, I'm a minority doing it. And I did it in a very whitewashed location, I would say. And so it's a big deal. And so when you, like you said, when you carry that weight for your family, it's more than just losing your career. I felt like I was letting everyone down, like I had gotten so far and, now I was kind of relegated backwards, but I don't think that way anymore. I really think that it was a way forward. And this was the only way I would ever balance my life, was probably to get sick.
And when you learned that, then that's a good point. Because you mentioned you don't think that anymore. Um, what got you to that point? Because I can understand you feeling, as you mentioned, that there's all this weight on you and maybe you're letting your family down.
Mm-hmm.
But how was the path to get to the point where you're thinking, this is who I am today? What I was yesterday, last year, 5 years ago, that's just a different woman. I'm a different woman today, and in a lot of ways, a better woman. How did you get to that point?
So, I mean, a lot of it is my support system, to be honest. I have a very supportive husband, like I've mentioned, and his take on it when I was really sick, the sickest, was you don't need to work, so don't work unless you want to. And so he found out really quickly that work is a huge passion of mine. And so he is hugely supportive of me working in my own business. And, I struggled with it. I had I still go to therapy every month, but I was going to therapy more frequently to really break through some of those old mindsets and shift my mindset. This is very hard to do. I mean, you have to think you've had a career for 40 some years, or not 40 years, until you're in your mid 40s. And, sort of 25, 30 years. And all of a sudden that's all different. So you're used to thinking one way, and now you have to think a total different way. And then I think the other thing is I'm a big believer in affirmations and vision boards. So I always have a vision board. Mine's right to my left here in the office. And I keep it on my phone now, so it's always present. And then I have one in my bedroom. And I have sticky notes on my mirror. One of them says I'm 100% healthy, because I think what you tell yourself, you manifest into reality. And so I had to start telling myself that I was not defined by my career, that I was not defined by my title, and that I was defined by what I contribute to the world and how I leave the people that I interact with. And so it was a lot of work, but I'm happy I got here.
Was it more work than you thought it would be? Or did you think that you always had it in you and you knew that you can do it?
I knew I could do it, but it was probably more work than I originally thought, just because I didn't realize how ingrained corporate success was to my mentality. I don't think I knew just how deep it went. I knew it was important, but I didn't think I relied that much on it. And so it was probably more work than I thought, but I definitely knew I could get through it and do it.
It seems like the separation of the body between you and the company was a little bit easier than the separation of the mind, because the state of mind lasted longer. Is that accurate to say?
Oh, so true. Absolutely true. I mean, they're without question. I was separated from my company in May of 2016. I opened Decaf Digital, my company, in May of 2016. And I think my mind caught up around the end of 2018.
Wow, because I'm thinking if I would, because as I speak to you, and I've done this, my business, interviewing people for about a year, there's still times where I catch myself thinking like the corporate side, even though I know that when it comes to the emailing, when it comes to the receipts, when it comes to the filing, when it comes to all this, it's on me. And sometimes I sit back and I'm like, where's my secretary? But I'm the secretary.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like when I look in the mirror, I'm yelling at myself. Why isn't it done? If there's a delay, if there's deadlines missed, it's 100% me. And for those listening, if you ever get into the business of starting your own business, and if you're coming from corporate, it is totally different. You don't have the resources at the beginning. And for many of us, we may not ever have the resources of a big Fortune 500 company, for example.
Yeah, I mean, your laptop dies, there's no IT department. When your customers need to be invoiced, that's you in QuickBooks or whichever software you choose. I mean, when the phone rings, you have to answer it. You can't be like, pick that up for me. I'm in a meeting, and there's a lot of pressure when you're starting your own business. And, it took me until I think the end of last year until I was able to hire a full-time assistant. What a godsend Cheryl is to me. She takes such good care of me. But, I still manage my own calendar. A lot of the things I didn't have to do when I was in corporate America, I still have to do. No, I have a team that works on my client work. I mean, it's a company now, but that still means that when one of their computers breaks down, they call me. There's no IT department for them to call. Or if they're out of printer paper, they call me to order, or if we need a Zoom subscription because the free one only lasts for 40 minutes and our meetings are an hour long. That's on me and my credit card, my business card. So there are so many things that are different that you just don't necessarily appreciate when you're in corporate America. But there are beautiful things about being an entrepreneur too, like being able to travel anywhere, anytime I want and hook back up as soon as I have an internet connection. There are definitely the balances, but it is a lot of work and you definitely miss what I call luxuries of corporate America.
Oh yeah. In my car, usually it's only me. And if I have to drive, let's say my mother or my father somewhere, they're in the back seat as well. For the first time in the last couple of months, because summer's just ending here, my passenger has become my laptop.
Yeah.
I put my laptop on the passenger seat. And if I'm somewhere, someone wants to, if I have to interview someone on the go, I just find an internet cafe, off I go. I have a folder of receipts. I've bought printer paper. I can't remember how many times I bought printer paper this month alone.
Yeah.
Right. So before it was just, let me go to the shelf. It's there.
Yeah.
But now it's a different experience. And with that experience, Adriana, what advice would you want to give someone who's up and coming, who maybe is in between where I am and where you are, or maybe they see the both of us and they say, I want to be like her because I've gone through some things in my life as well. And here she is with a big smile, with her fur baby on her lap, and still making a difference and impact in the world. What would you want to tell that person?
I think the best advice I ever can give to an entrepreneur or someone starting their own business is to figure out what you're really good at, hone in on your niche, and outsource the rest. Because like accounting, not my specialty. I have a degree in business, an advanced degree, not my specialty. So instead of frustrating yourself and slamming your head against the wall, hire a bookkeeper for $35, every month or 50 or 100 to reconcile your books. I think there is more opportunity for people to hire freelance help than there ever has been. And you can find great help wherever you are in the world for a reasonable price. And I think you just have to kind of know what your niche is and know for your business and know what you're good at individually, and then delegate or outsource the rest of it, because it's just not going to pay back in spades if you try and do it by yourself. And the other thing I would say is make sure you have a business plan, because sometimes people just start and they're like, everyone needs my product. Well, not everyone needs anything. I mean, not everyone needs makeup, right? Most men don't. Some men do, and they do better than I do. But, the interesting thing is not everyone's going to need your product or your service or your consulting. But if you zone in on what your niche is and you really build a strategic marketing plan, you will have success.
And that's absolutely true. We sometimes overinflate our value to the world. We'll say that, look at me. Everyone needs someone like me. Well, many people probably don't, right? Let's be honest.
Surprising to you, yes.
Yeah, right. You hurt their ego a little bit there. My apologies, everyone listening. But no, we look at it as anytime, at least for me, when I was starting this, when I looked at it as there's so many people doing what I'm doing. So what's going to make me unique enough that they want to even engage with me? So one thing that I learned very quickly was your network is your net worth.
Oh, so true.
right? Meaning those around you, especially when you're starting, you need to lean on them heavily in the beginning to get the word out for them for support, for products, from word of mouth, whatever the situation is. And then you can build from there. And that's something that I'll leave with everyone who's listening today is to make sure that the team around you benefits you in some way. The person that you'd go clubbing with on the Friday night, not so much. But the person who has a business plan, as you mentioned, the person who is business minded, the person who's a go getter, just ask them. I think sometimes we don't ask enough questions before we take that first step. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think some people are afraid to ask questions because they think they're being bothersome or a hindrance. What I always tell people is, regardless of what role I've been in, whether I was the highest ranking senior officer in a company or an entrepreneur and CEO of my own company, I have always made time for people. And that's just how people are. If you're polite and say, I have a question, I value your experience and your input and your time, would love to spend 15 minutes talking to you, people will respond. I mean, I think you'll be surprised at how people respond to things in a positive way. And when they do, thank them. Send a thank you note, send a Starbucks gift card, something, but thank them.